Hello guys, welcome to Major's Garage. This is Suellio. I'm the crew chief for the Formula 1, Formula 3 and Formula 3.5. Today we're going to see my lap here at Sebring. The lap time is a 151.1. I'm sorry, 154.1. And let's go straight away for the first corner of the lap here. So we're coming for this really fun corner. Fun when we nail though. It's very easy to scratch the wall here, and also easy to get on off track if you force a little bit too much. But let's go straight away to that. So my turning reference is whenever the wall, can we see that the wall actually does a little bit of a last turn to the left here before we start turning in. So I'm actually going to that direction, as you can see here. I'm really pointing like I'm going to crash at that wall, and then at the last moment I start turning. As you can see, I'm pretty close to it, and then I'm quite open. We generally tend to turning a little bit too early, so I'm turning a little bit late, but then I'm closing and closing. Let's go again to the chase cam here. So that's how I start turning. I'm braking very slightly, and then almost already releasing, and then getting back on the throttle way before the apex. And because I know that with my setup here, we want to get back on the throttle early to activate a little bit earlier the differential, carry more speed, and make the car rotate more. So as you can see, I'm really close to the wall at the apex, and the apex is we can see this cone here representing the apex. So that's where I want to be the closest to the wall, and then after that immediately you can see that if I'm carrying the right speed, the car will naturally go wide and wants to go off track here. So your job is to just hold the car in place, and if you are at the right speed, your car will go just to the curb here. So let's see again this in slow motion. So looking at this very last turning on the wall, turning quite late, so you can close until the cone, then you're the closest to the wall, and you're getting back on the throttle way before the apex. Now for the T2 345, basically my braking reference here is the second set of cones with two cones, and I'm starting to brake a little bit before it, but my maximum pressure is probably at it. As you can see, I'm starting to brake a little bit before, but my maximum pressure is here, so you can definitely use this two cone with the white line as a reference. And it's very important here that we brake on a straight line for at least until the last cone, and then we start turning in. The turning here is slightly complicated. We definitely want to be very careful with this curve here. As you can see, I'm barely touching it, and the car is taking that well, but we don't want to do more than that. I would say that just going for the yellow line is a safe reference. And then we want to get back on the throttle, try to go around this curb. You see, I got a little bit of it, not more than that. If we get more than that, it's going to be not optimal. And then we try to bring our car to the right here again, so we can have a good line for the last corner. So as you can see, I'm bringing my car basically over the white line here, accelerate a little bit, and then I'm basically trail braking, just like carrying like 5, maybe less than 5% brakes, just to point the car a little bit more, and then trying to get back on the throttle slightly early before the apex, so you can again activate the differential and make the car rotate a little bit more. You can see that I'm slightly oversteering here. I actually lost this apex by 1 tire or 2. Again, we want to touch the yellow line here, but definitely not touch the curb. This curb is really high for the Formula car, and it's definitely not a good idea. So really getting that rotation, we can touch this curb even slightly before if we go for the higher part. We can see that this curb is actually high at this part at the beginning, but then it becomes flat. So we can use a little bit of the high curb here. We just need to be careful not to attack it too aggressively. That will make the car a little bit upset, and definitely you don't want to touch the sand here with a little bit of the rear tire. That will cause an instant spin. so be careful with that. You can see that I'm basically almost touching it here, but my car is basically not churning anymore. If you touch around here, this area is the dangerous part, and you may have a high chance of spinning to the left here, so be careful with that. Then we want just to stay on the inside here for this straight, and then for the next braking zone for the hairpin, my reference is this second row of cones here with the 3 cones, but my maximum pressure is slightly after that. So you can see that I'm not necessarily having my maximum pressure there. I start braking there, but my maximum pressure is maybe 1 or 2 cars after it. So we can use that as a reference, but always knowing how quickly we're starting to brake. If you brake too slowly, then your braking reference is not as precise as it could be. So if you try to punch the brakes, you have a better precision with where your maximum pressure is going to be, and the car is going to stop in a more predictable way. Again, braking really on a straight line here, we definitely only want to stop the car before we think about turning. This corner is much slower than the speed we were carrying before, so we need to have that patience, and then we start churning. And in this case here, I turned in a little bit too early, and you see that I touched the inside here, and to compensate that, I was actually getting back on the throttle a little bit earlier than I would do, and a little bit progressively and gently until I was out of the curb, and then I would get back on the throttle more progressively, more aggressively, I would say. So generally, if you brake a little bit later and you kind of struggle to churn but find yourself with a better rotation here, you can be a little bit more aggressive with the throttle. It really depends on how you turn in. In my case, I turned in a little bit too early. If that happens necessarily when you turn in a little bit too early and you find yourself on this inside of the curb here, it may be because you're braking a little bit too early. So in my case, maybe if I braked a little bit, like a hair later, I could have done this corner a little bit more aggressively and gotten out of it a little bit more aggressively as well. But I was really able to carry a good amount of speed here, so I got away with it. Now for the next corner, I'm braking between the second row of cones and the third one. But as you can see, I'm really braking much closer to the third row that has 2 cones. So the penultimate row, you can see that 1, 2, start braking, and then 3. So I get my maximum brake pressure maybe 1 or 2 cars before the 2 cones, but I'm still way braking on a straight line here. Start turning again a little bit after the last cones here with the white line, and again, I don't want to touch this curb. I want to be just at the yellow line. I can see I'm basically not touching this time. I'm really, maybe the tire is not even touching it because of the camber. So yes, I'm definitely using only the yellow line, and then trying to get aggressively on the throttle. You don't need to worry about having your car all over to the left here, because you have enough downforce to go around this second curve here. You can see that I have time to bring the car a little bit and then turn it back again, trying to touch the yellow line and just maintaining the least resistance line here. And then again, I'm starting to brake at the 2 a little bit earlier, but as you can see, my braking maximum pressure is really closer to the curb, so it's always something in between, and how quickly you start braking will determine how your car will stop. So if you tend to brake too slowly, if you squeeze the brakes progressively, you will definitely need to brake a little bit earlier, and if you tend to really punch the brakes, you can use a more precise braking point. So I would go a little bit more to the curb. Then not a long time on a straight line here, because you have to immediately start turning. It's not a very slow speed corner. We don't want to touch this curb definitely. So as you can see, again, yellow line, and then getting back on the throttle as early as possible so you can have that extra rotation here. And then for this corner, I'm starting to brake. I would say my maximum pressure is at the two cones here, and I'm churning in, carrying a little bit of speed, and then definitely we don't want to touch the inside of the curb here. As you can see, I'm being quite safe actually. I could use a little bit more of the curb, but the car here definitely does not like this little bump after the curb. So be really careful with that. And then you accelerate. You don't want to bring your car too early to this curb because you will need to change directions there. So you can see that I'm not actually hitting the curb here, but then I change direction and I use the curb when it's already turning. So we can see that we can meet the curb when it's straight, but we don't want to. What we want is to really wait for the curb to start turning and then we use it. Then we're gonna have a much better line for the next corner. Well, that's exactly what I do. You can see how really aggressive I am being here. And then I'm really bringing my car a lot to the left and then already turning to have a good line for this one. As you can see, I missed the apex again a little bit here, but I was able to really be on the limit of the rotation of the car, so I was able to get away with it. I was able to carry a good amount of speed, and yeah. And here again, you can definitely use all this curb here. Just be careful not to hit the grass with the rear tires. That's really dangerous with the new model, so let's be safe with that. And then for the last corner, I'm starting to turn before I brake. So as you can see, I'm pointing the car, and then I start braking, not too much. As you can see, I'm braking like almost nothing, like 25 to 30%, and then I'm already starting to release. I downshift, and then I'm really trying to bring the car. This car has more downforce than speed in terms of engine power. So as you can see, I'm able to really do the corner with just a little bit of braking, and then I want to get back on the throttle before the bridge again to activate the differential and really make the car rotate more. There's a little bump here, but my setup is really taking that well. It may tend to oversteer a little bit on this exit later in the stint, so be careful with that. So you have to be a little bit progressive with the steering, or to be aware that the car may start oversteering a little bit, and you need to lift to control the stress on the rear tires. So yeah, thank you, and see you next week. Bye bye.